All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for episode number 8 of a series in regards. I'm joined this morning by the lovely Ghylian Bell of Urban Yoga Foundation. She's joining us from New Jersey. Thanks for coming, Ghylian.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, on today's episode, guys, we're going to talk about action. If you've been tuning in, we've talked about adaptability and consistency and intention and mindset and all kinds of other topics. And action feels really timely. And if you've been paying attention, you may have also noticed that I took a little break from the series last week because it just didn't feel like there was anything else to talk about except this. And I wasn't sure who to talk to about it. And then when we thought of Ghylian, I was like, of course, because Ghylian's had a relationship with Body Electric for quite a while. And I love talking to her. And I feel like we're really on the same wavelength.
Thank you.
So, I said in the show description when we posted about the show yesterday that like intention is really important. And we talked about this too, Ghylian, that it's important to know what and where you're going before you act, but that also intention without action can be kind of empty.
Yes.
So can you just speak on that a little bit, Ghylian?
So we're in a position now that we've never been in before, ever. We have the world view looking at what's happening and how we're going to use our power together, how we're going to create solidarity. And the only way we can create solidarity is to get to know each other and to be in the room with uncomfortable conversations. So when action and intention meet, it's not a very comfortable place. And we have to just honor that, just honor the discomfort of the process, and the understanding will happen. It's this idea that I have that when Black power meets white fragility, we create solidarity, because those are the two words that make us afraid of each other, right? But if people of color, and we say that, right? I say people of color, I'm including everybody in the spectrum, right? And Black people are allowing and grounding themselves and being called Black people. And I'm hearing that I think the Associated Press has now made Black using a capital B, just to empower that. So it's culture. It's a culture, because we have been called so many things and had to ride through that, the metamorphosis of what we've been called, what we call ourselves and what we've been called. So when we talk about people of color, we widen the spectrum, and all of that is a part of the intention. Like, how do you feel about not knowing who you are? We have a great intention of learning about each other, but if we don't put things in historical context, then intention without action is meaningless. So the action would be, how do we change the history books? How do we change the knowledge of what people of color don't know about Black people? So that now we can include everyone in the spectrum, because we're all seen. And it doesn't mean that I don't see color, because that is also very dismissive. It just means that I see culture. I see the variety and the beauty of everything that we are and everything we're about. And that intention and that action of unveiling that truth to all of us is what we need. And I think we've been lied to, both sides. We've been led astray, hoodwinked, as Malcolm X said so eloquently years ago. So
it's true. And thank you for bringing up education, because I think that piece is really important. And it's really hard to set clear intentions and know how to act when you have a lot of misinformation. And I think that creates a lot of resentment when you feel like you've been misled. And so I think we are seeing a really powerful thing happen right now, where people are taking responsibility for their own educations, because our history books like the way that we were taught was just so wrong. Like I shared with you before we went live that, you know, I was reading about all the Tulsa events and like Black Wall Street and like just being shocked. And then I'm like kind of pissed off that I didn't get taught that, because then I'm like basing my opinions, my intentions, and my actions on lies.
Right.
And so that's upsetting. And so I do think that, and we talked about this yesterday too, that it's so important as well to study not just external events, but yes, of course, external events, but also we talked about how important it is to be with yourself for a while too before acting. And we've been noticing and seeing so much reaction and a lot of energy and a lot of back and forth and a lot of tension. And that, you know, we just kind of agreed yesterday that it's a good idea to just be still for a minute and be with yourself before taking action, to again make sure your action is well guided, because action, again, without intention, like where are you going? It's like if you're trying to get from A to B and you don't have directions, it could take all day and you could end up in the wrong place. So that's really important as well. So thanks for bringing up education.
Yeah, that is. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I feel like there's a lot of angst for people to want to do something. There's a lot of people who are calling on their Black friends and because they don't know what to say, they don't know how to feel. And there's a lot of Black bodies who just want to be still and quiet because there's a lot of energy towards them.
Yeah.
So when they retract, it seems painful for some people who care about them and love them, but it's only because we need to be still and quiet. We need to observe, so that when we make right choices in action, we're grounded in those choices. It's a clarity. It's grounded in educated action, not just emotional action. Emotional action has a place, right? But we need educated action. We need people who are doing the work to know what's happening. Like you on the phone with your mother for 3 hours talking about Tulsa because you didn't know. And that, why did that have to be a 3-hour conversation? Because first you were shocked, then you were angry, then you were hurt. Like the emotions I'm sure that you went through, like I went through when I first realized it. It was just like, now you have to sit back and decide, what am I going to do with this information? How is it settling into my body? Where do I feel it? Because when we unveil ourselves deeply, and everyone in your platform, right? Everyone who's doing yoga, everyone who's doing wellness, everyone who's doing mindfulness, this is why we do this work. We're made for this. We're made to unveil the truth about ourselves. We're made to dig into our DNA and activate our ancestry on a cellular level, because we are all one. We're all related. We're just like forgetting that we're brothers and sisters. We're forgetting the truth of our union, of what yoga really means, So thank you so much for this platform.
Yeah, and it's getting increasingly difficult to carve out that stillness for ourselves. There's so much pressure to respond and to react, and like pressure on individuals to share how they feel about it, to take a stance, pressure on business owners to take a stance and have a message and put out their statement about it. And like there's always all this pressure, and it's like really fast, and it makes it really difficult to be clear. And so thanks for presencing that too. I think like we kind of keep saying at the B, both internally and externally, like we need to be patient and graceful with each other. We're all working through a lot of stuff and we only have so much bandwidth.
Yes.
And it's not just that we're trying to do this like collective healing of a trauma of miseducation and abuse. There's also a pandemic, and you also probably have your family, and like maybe work is weird because of the pandemic, and like there's a lot going on, guys. So can we just like be kind and a little more patient, and like not put so much pressure on each other to respond so quickly? So thanks for saying that, because I'm really personally feeling that.
Yeah.
And it makes it more difficult to get clear, to just have the pot keep getting stirred. I use this metaphor. I've probably mentioned this on a couple other series because it just really works and makes sense, of like the mind and the container of the body as like a bottle of water, a clear glass bottle of water with some sand in it. And when it's agitated, you can't see through it. You have to let the bottle be still, let the sand settle to the bottom, then you can think clearly. But there's just so much agitation all around, people poking.
There is agitation. And I want to clarify something, because there's an urgency that has to happen, right? So there are some people who are prepared to act right away in that urgency. There are others that need to observe so that they can be ready for the javelin. They can be ready to take on, like when you're in track and you have to, the first runner is going and that second runner is just waiting for that, but to be placed in their hand, that javelin to be placed so that they can take it and keep moving. That's what I feel like this movement has to be. And Angela Davis said it so well when she talks about radical self-care, right? And she's been, the milestone and the anchor of the civil rights movement for what we have right now. Black Panther movement, civil rights movement, we have Angela Davis, thank goodness. And she talks about radical self-care because they didn't do that. And they lost a lot of people because they just were working so hard and not taking care of themselves. So we have frontline people that need to act right away, and that's fine because they're ready. And then we need the second tier of people to come in because they've observed and now they have a plan. Mm-hmm. And their plan is, what is the plan? Is it solidarity to include us and know the story and have communication? Like, what is the plan? But as long as we all have a plan of action and we take turns making sure that we're not wearing out the front line. The frontline people are exhausted because they acted right away and we needed them to. Not everybody is a frontline person, right? So that second line comes in and then they're ready for that frontline action because they've observed and they're like, okay, this is what I need to do. The same thing happened to me. You know, when this pandemic of race happened, and I call this pandemic is the biggest of all because it's all about that. You know, it's nature versus nature, looking at what it is. I'm so sorry for that. Looking at what it is that we're like embracing about the truth of where we are. And how do we take the seeds that were planted? Because you and I planted seeds when I first came to Florida, right? And we were waiting to nurture this growth, and now it's harvest time, right? We have a harvest. What are we going to do with this harvest? What are we going to do with this food that we've been talking about, doing something? And now we have this action moment where we can really do it. And some others are not as fortunate as to have those alliances set in place. So they need help navigating the waters. They need help identifying ways to create cause and purpose so that they feel like they're a part of this movement, because it's a movement and it's an evolution. It's not a revolution. Assata Shakur said it so well as well. I'll share that with you so you can share it with the population. But we have so many allies who are ready to teach and show up because we're all learning. We're all in service right now, all of us.
Yeah, that's getting deep, but like when you're talking about that we're not all going to respond or be ready or like have the same, there was actually a lot there. So there's a couple things I want to unpack a little bit. And the first thing is that like, there is a theme here of like not accepting what is other. And that is like a black and white thing and all throughout the people of color, let's be real, like people look different from you and you are afraid of that and that creates problems. And it's kind of a little bit the same now. I see that same sort of thing where it's like, well, I think this is the right way to do this. And so everyone should be doing it this way. And like a lack of acceptance for like all of the different flavors of people and the different personalities and the different ways that like we can contribute to this movement and this evolution, which is you know, a lifelong, like a many generational thing. It's like we said yesterday, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So that's the first thing. Like, I feel like that's a really important point that we can get deep with. This is about accepting and embracing what is other, and the knowledge that like a lot of different ways of being, seeing, acting make us stronger and richer. So thank you for that. I think that there's so much there. Like, we could just talk about that for 30 minutes.
Yeah, completely. I agree with
And
that.
then the other thing that you said that I think is really important is that like that self-care bit, and that like some people who are clear about what needs to be done and they're doing it, that's powerful, but they will get tired.
Yes.
And so like, let's not beat up the people who are sitting still right now waiting for the next wave. Let's let them be holding that space to be ready. And in the meantime, hopefully they're also doing meaningful work. Action doesn't have to look like being the person who's physically taking down the monument or protesting outside. And again, I'm with you, like that's really important. And the people that are clear that that's their role right now, like I'm really grateful for them. But it's also like everybody else who's in the wings, what it's also action to listen and read and like prepare. That's active.
And call your DA.
Yeah.
And call your sheriff, and call your mayor, and email them. Action is making the phone calls and making the emails. Action is going to places like Grassroots Law with Sean King and just being aware of what's happening in the world, and activating Kevin Inspires. There's so many, and I'll share a bunch of emails with you of people who are doing some really amazing grassroots work, because action could be in your home and just making those calls so we can fill up that email box with words and names and people who say, this is not good. I do not want to live in a city that promotes this violence, that does this work. Wilmington, they had a new chief of police that was just going over recordings on body cams and overheard a conversation of two officers, and he had to fire them. And it was so hard for him, but he said, I can't tolerate this kind of energy on the police force. So even with dismantling the kind of energy that doesn't serve any of us, when we pay for the people to serve us and protect us, we need to make sure that they are trained well. We need to make sure that there are things in place with administrators at schools who find it in their power to treat Indigenous children terribly. I mean, this administration right now, we have kids who are still locked in cages, so we have a lot of work to do that is affecting Black, brown, red, and yellow bodies, right? Because that's the spectrum. But the Black body is the catalyst that's going to change for everybody, right? And the breath is the symbol of that change. The fact that collectively we watch spirit, breath, come out of a human being, which is what brought us together. And as healers and yogis, the breath is everything. So this breath, breathing, I can't breathe, the humility and grace and honor that we have, the ability to be free, the privilege we have to breathe, and then the travesty and the pain that we saw in someone who lost his breath as we watched. Our lives cannot be trending this way. You know what I mean? Like we don't want this to be a normal thing, that when our children or our parents, or we scroll and we look, that we see this kind of action without intention.
And without education.
Ignorant. And without compassion.
Ignorant action.
Ignorant action. Yeah.
And I just want to so that loops it back to education for us. Yes. And I do feel like, as as the Body Electric, like our kind of whole vision and mission has always been to provide tools and information for people to sit with themselves and decide for themselves. And so even though we've been getting a lot of external pressure to like do this or say this or take these stances, we're still trying to like really stay true to ourselves in that way. But we do feel like maybe an action, you know, other than like planting these seeds and forging these relationships with people like you and with foundations like Urban Yoga, that we can be helpful in sharing just truths and information. And so maybe you could help support us on that, because there's so much out there and it's very hard for us to know like who are some sources of information that we can trust. And so I wrote a few names down that you said, like Angela Davis and Asada Shakur and Sean King. And I like definitely want to look those people up, but maybe also like one way you could support us, and I don't want to like ask you to do shit for us. It's not like that, but like
on the air.
On the air, I'm really putting you on the spot here. But if you feel called, you could share with us things you think we could share, because we do have a voice.
Yes.
And but we just want to be careful about how we use that voice. We don't want to be sharing misinformation, and we also don't want to tell people what to do and what to think, but we can share information.
I think, and I truly appreciate that a lot, because if we don't communicate, then we don't have an opportunity to bridge a way home.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're all just trying to get home, you know, and home is just love, right? It's just like knowing that you're safe, knowing that the people that you have called your friends are your friends, that they protect you, that they care for you, that they speak kind to you. How do you use your mouth to your friends? How do you use your hands? How do you use your heart? How do you use your mind? And I teach in my meditation that we are not our bodies, right? Our bodies are a tool. How do you use your tool? How do you honor and take care of the tool so that it can be useful for your spiritual self, for your walk? Because the breath is the animated spirit. It embodies you. It creates energy in the body that makes us move, and it's alive and it's ready. It's ready to help the body serve. We are here to serve. We are here not to be masters of anything. We are here in service to help each other come home. You know, I should be able to walk into a room and feel completely embraced. Mm-hmm. You should be able to walk into a room and feel completely embraced. The lessons of our past creates fear for each side. And it creates fear for even people of color against each other. When I first moved to Harlem, it was a conversation. Are you okay? Are you going to feel safe? I lived in Harlem for almost 10 years and I always kept my door open. That's how safe I felt, you know. But I, in my own mind, had to move into that place of discomfort to unveil the truth that was a lie that I was told. So we're all in that place of re-educating and remembering who we are, you know?
So good.
Yeah.
And I think that we like form this crust around our beliefs or something, like because in the past maybe I've acted on this belief, I now for some reason have this impulse to protect that belief because I have acted on that belief. And so I don't want to admit that I've acted badly. But we just have to get over ourselves in that way, don't we? We have to like really be willing to be like, well, I was fucking wrong, or I didn't get educated well, or I didn't think through that. And that's like a really hard, vulnerable thing to do. And that's why like it is so important to give people a little grace and time to like sit for a minute with themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the practice, so this is the thing, right? We are in leadership with people who practice. They practice mindfulness and they practice yoga. Why? Why do we practice? Do we practice because we just want a tight body for the beach?
Some people probably.
Some people probably do, right? Exactly.
And but that's okay.
That is for some, that's okay. But when we talk about reclaiming Indigenous presence to practice, right? That's not what this practice was brought in for. And that's another problem. It is. It's just one of those things we have to talk about. Yoga was not designed for vanity. It just has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
You know, and when we take Indigenous practices and we morph them into our own ideologies, we lose so much.
You're just using the tool like poorly.
Poorly, yeah. And what I honor about our conversation is that, yes, we have this platform where we give people the freedom to use the practice, but our responsibility is to make sure that intention of the truth of the practice is always grounded and founded and always revealed. Because if we don't do that, then we're doing a disservice for the people who come in and expect us to know that this practice has a myriad of energy around it, not just one avenue. That when you look at it that way, then you can have nature meet nature, and that's how we see each other. Because just like we are in practice, we have a myriad of things that, you know, we meet the practice in the same place. But when we're just there to look at that one thing, like I just like you because you give me good hip hop music. I like that music. Or I just like your style, right? It's that one thing. But there's so much beauty in all of us that we get to share when we realize that we are not our body, we are energy beings. We are a community inside of ourselves, waiting to get out and shake it up with other community members, waiting to unite and come together in peace and union. That's the practice. You know, we just can't get lost in
ego.
The one way of, there you go. There's that word.
I'm like almost crying so many times in this conversation. And yeah, like, I think it's really fair and true what you're saying about the way some people use yoga. And like I said earlier in this conversation that we don't want to tell people what to do or what to think. And certainly like, we are not going to say, you have, if you're coming into our building, then you have to be doing yoga this way. But I agree with you. And we very strongly feel this, that it's important for us to let people know that this practice isn't meant to strengthen your ego. It's meant to weaken your ego. It's meant to open you up to, like, to the point of the conversation before, like, it's meant to help you break those crusts around your beliefs. It's meant to help you still the sand so you can see clearly. And so, yeah, it is disappointing that a lot of people don't see the potential in that.
That's because they don't know.
Yeah. And it's hard, like, I mean, you probably feel this way too. Like, we can't help but feel a little sensitive and called out when there's like all this social media, like, you know, calling out yoga for like, you know, cultural appropriation and like all that kind of stuff. And we're like, but we don't do that. And, you know, we don't exactly, but like, we certainly must have some students who are coming in and using the practice to strengthen their own egos. Yes. You see it with look at like the history that yoga has of gurus.
Yes.
You can obviously use the practice to create power, and it says it right in the Yoga Sutras. It's like, oh yeah, you can use yoga to get all of these powers, but that's not the point, and it'll totally fuck your practice because then you're going to be strengthening your ego, and that's not the point. So thank you for bringing that up, because that's also like a really big subject for us right now and something that we talk a lot about. But we're, again, like, we just are here to provide information. So if I have a room full of people practicing, I can tell them that like the point of this physical practice and everything that we're doing is really to help you crumble your walls, be willing to be vulnerable and uncomfortable. You get strong so that you can be uncomfortable and not be afraid
and not be afraid. Right. So that's where leadership and our ability to connect with language, right? We're changing the language. We're listening, right? We're changing the language and we're learning. So it's language, listening, and learning. Like we have to like really be clear that we are like breaking down the structures of how we're communicating to each other and how we're identifying how to reclaim our power. And I'm gonna bring in this moment to say, the women, it's the women. A lot of the women have just released their power and we have to reclaim it. In the civilizations that started this whole thing, they were matriarchal. It's in Africa, it's in Egypt. When you look at the images of the pharaohs and the women who walked with them, because the women were pharaohs, they walked in tandem. They walked together as partners. The woman always had her hand on the man, and the man always had Kemetic fist by his side. In claiming the power and the strength and protection that he would serve this woman who would protect and take and honor that. But she was the wisdom that blew in the third eye of that. And because we're in a patriarchal society, the structure of women and the power of women has been deflated to think that they are mere novelties and caricatures of themselves sometimes.
Yeah.
And women have to reclaim their power and lead. They are partners and purposeful. They are not subject to just be dismissing their power and giving it to the man. You're the head of the household. You're the one who makes the decisions. Whatever you say goes. I follow your lead. No, we lead together. And until women, I'm talking to you, women. Women, we need your power. We need your grit. We need your purpose. And I love the feminine woman. I love that beautiful self, but there's a beauty in the strength of being a partner to your partner, of two people coming together and connecting to a vision, whatever that means. You know, not to be non-gender fluid, but whatever that means in that point of not being powerless. The feminine principle is a force. That's why hurricanes are called with women's names, and earthquakes and Mother Nature and the planet is female, because it's a force. And I just think we're losing a little bit of that power, and we have to reclaim it. We have to reclaim it.
God, I got like such chills when you were talking about the pharaohs, and like whenever I get like goose chills all over my body when someone's saying something, I'm like, now I know that's the fucking truth. I feel it in my all through my insides. And it's true, we're out of balance. I was just like thinking as you were talking just then about like female energy and what female energy, like not like female body, but like female energy, which is within all of us. I mean, it's very suppressed in our culture, in men too. They have female energy that they're afraid to share, right?
And that's why we're in this thinking of like, that's why we're in this conundrum.
And prakriti, and like you can't have one without the other, or there's no earth, there's no us.
There's no us. It's so I have this idea that when we looked at this big surge, because people talk about it all the time, this big surge of autistic children coming through, this big surge of bisexuality or homosexuality coming through, I have this theory that because we've been living in the imbalanced way of self, these energies come through to bridge more compassion and balance for us. That we are so stuck out of the balance of that feminine, masculine energy, the beauty of the duality that we all hold. That spirit had to come in and push, you know, that very masculine man who has that gay son. Guess what you have to do? You have to bridge compassion for your son, or you lose him, right? That highly evolved analytical mom who has an autistic child who's like, what? Guess what you have to do? You have to build compassion for that child. You know, like some of us, these things that we pray for, these things that we ask when we speak to the universe, we don't get them the way we think we should get them. We get them the way we need them so that we can grow. And this time right now that we're in, this brilliant, amazing time of unveiling the truth, of people learning history that only we knew. Like I could say I knew more about white history than I knew about my own. And I had to do self-study to know about me. So now we are asking for the reverse. We're asking people who identify as white to study and do the history so that you can find out really what this movement is all about. Because it's not a secret anymore. Like you mentioned, we got Tulsa, we've got the summer massacre of 1919. You didn't even like, come on, like that happened, that just went around for a whole year. Mobs went around to different towns. Tulsa was one of those towns.
I know.
Right? So this is, but people don't know these things. So they're operating from another place. But
and then when the information does come up, that thing happens where, because we haven't known and we've acted out on these like false beliefs for so long, we want to protect them. Yes. And so, I mean, all of this like ties together. It's almost like hard to just like keep it focused on one thing, but then that ties into the female energy. We need that, like we need to care about the relationships. We need to care about the conversations. It can't just always be about protection and power. Like you said, the pharaoh with the Kemetic fists, and then the woman holding, like, there needs to be a softening.
Softening, yes, my darling. And we have the images. That's why I'm like, we're not even doing the homework that is right in front of us.
My mom is watching, by the way.
Oh,
she just said, I'm loving this.
Like, tell your mom, like, she's like one of my biggest fans. I was trolling your mom, like, way before I was interested in, like, liking Body Electric. I was just like, wait, what? Where is she? Talk about coming full circle.
A lot of people are really hearing us talk today, and it feels really good. People are saying, we hear loud and clear. Christina Rich says, we are the future, Gracie, powerful and purposeful. Carly says, there is a necessary divergence from either or thinking. Like you're saying, like it's not, we've been saying that it's like all tied in with each other.
Yes.
We need a softening. We need to feel safe and allowed to figure out what we need to do without a lot of all this pressure.
Yes.
And how to act. And so, yeah, action, it's a really big one. Yeah, we have to be careful about how we get to that step of action.
Yes, because this is a movement and an evolution, and it's an evolution of love. It's an evolution of family. The family has been broken down because we've been told, work, work, work. Do it yourself. You can do it. You're on your own. You decided to do that. You got it. It's not who we are. We're a tribe. We're a collective. We're a body. We're a union. And all of that facade about displaced families everywhere in this freaking country. And that's not who we are. That was our biggest mistake.
I love that idea of like, we're a body. I connect to that really strongly. And I think about that sometimes. I try to like zoom way out of my little bubble. And if we can think of, I mean, it's like really almost too trippy to think about the whole universe is this way. But if we can just start with this earth is like one physical organism that we're all a part of, like that can be really powerful, because then it's like not about us. And that's what yoga is about. Again, bringing it full circle. It's not about
That's
me.
it. We're talking the same. Yeah. We need to do a panel. We don't have enough time on this call.
Yeah, I know. I think we should do it again. Would you do it again? Would you
I would
talk
love
about it
to. I
again?
think it's very important.
Yeah, and we have already gone a little bit over like my sort of time I like to do, but I don't care because this is so good. But I want to just ask really quickly, do any of you guys who are out there have any questions? I really appreciate your supportive comments, but if you have any questions or anything that we can talk about that would be helpful or serve you, now would be a really great time to ask those. And I want to let all of you guys know that Ghylian's going to be doing a virtual workshop through the Body of Electric on July 18th at 4 o'clock about mindfulness and movement and social justice. How do mindfulness and movement play into this evolution? And maybe do you want to just talk about that for a minute while we let people cook up a question or two?
Sure. So I've been doing a lot of wonderful work with people in solidarity. You know, like this is the topic, and how do we communicate with people on the front lines who've been doing this work for years and allow the tools to be shown? So we'll talk about tools of self-care, self-awareness, awareness coming first, what is happening, right? And then what's happening in my self-care as it pertains to what's happening outside of the self. And then how does it relate to my family? And then how does it relate to my community? So we'll break it up in 3 pillars: the self, family, and community. And not to stir the pot, but one of the things I want to leave you with is, for those who think that you need to argue with your family about things that you feel, I need you to release that, because you're arguing with yourself. Allow the family members who love you to see you in action of service, so that the little ones who are watching you understand the beauty of compassion during this walk. This is not, it's not about fighting the demon that is within you in your household. This is about being the example of change in the most educated and highly evolved way. And that takes practice, purpose, and community, and family and support. This is not, you're not alone. You're not alone.
Whew, I am emotional, but we have a question, so I'm going to read it. Thank you, Carly. Carly says, I think there's a big call for action, and I resonated deeply with your words of being cautious around our action steps. How do we stay aware of where our action is stemming from, ensuring that we're acting with heart and not ego?
That's a really good question.
So good. Thank you, Carly.
Thank you, Carly. Carly, that's one of those personal questions that, and I say always, check in with your body. You are not your body, but your body is a tool, and your body, if treated well, will reveal to you that purpose. It's almost like Caitlin said, you said those words, I got goose pimples. I know it's fact, right? The body is a barometer for your truth. The breath is the wings of that. So when you're completely in practice, right, it's revealed. The intuition, it's clear. Your right action, your ego, you'll know. And I know that's a loaded question, but that's why when we speak about the practice is going to have you release that ego, right? And once that ego is released and you're sitting there open, and I know a lot of us have been there. The first time that happened to me, and I was like on the mat just crying. Like, what the heck is this happening to my body? My body was shaking, I'm crying. And I was fracturing every bit of belief system I had, things of my family, my past, my present, my friends, just fracturing things that didn't serve me. So by the time I walked out and I was met with something that was going to challenge me to see if I did meet my practice in service, then I could look back and not react, but I could act with purpose, not a reaction. A reaction is somebody bumps into you and you're ready to like, what? Or, oh, are you okay? People bump into me all the time and I'm asking them if they're okay. But that's because I'm in practice. My ego's gone. I'm not thinking people are bumping into me because they're mad at me. I'm thinking, did I not pay attention? Or if I have an argument with somebody, and I don't argue with anybody, I don't know why I said that. If there's a discourse, right? I'm always looking at myself like, what am I attracting here? What inside me is attracting this energy? There's something going on. And either I can change that, or I realize that, this person in this situation is not serving my highest good anymore. And it's my responsibility to shift that in any way that means something. I don't even know if I'm answering your question, but it all starts with you. Am I?
think you did a really good job, and like it does come back a little, to the practice a little bit, and to it's harder to do when you don't have those tools, but
Yes.
the tools of the practice and meditation and stillness and all of those things, what they help us do is not identify with the mind, right? The body can like help us, like there's like sort of this mind who's like the voice in all of our heads who like kind of spins out and talks and gets a little wild. And that's why we talked about like you kind of need to ground down into the body, because sometimes this just goes off and like we identify too much with it. And so we can often, I think, find that intention and like our thoughts and like our truth in that stillness. Like, again, back to the freaking bottle of water. Like, I feel like I'm so boring, but like you have to let the sand settle a little bit so that you know what to do. And this is a good segue to Sydney's question. And are you good on time, Ghylian? Because
I'm good.
Great talk and important, and people are hearing us, so let's just roll with it.
I'm doing.
Sydney says, I know you both spoke about the need for educated action versus emotional action. And my question is, isn't it important to have both at the same time? I feel like full transparency is important at this time to show our humanness, to show the raw truth of our experiences. For me, it's been important to show my emotional action while educating myself in the background. Well, first, Sydney, like I'm a little confused about like, like showing emotions is not the same thing necessarily as like acting on your emotions. And I'm just going to like lead off, Ghylian, and then I'm going to pass the baton for you. Obviously, she probably doesn't really actually want to hear my answer, but I just like have something that I want to say, which is that like I think what we're really saying, Ghylian and I, is that we just have to be careful with our action, because actions have consequences. And it's one thing to share that like, I'm hurting, I feel anger, I'm resentful. Like I personally have all those things. Like I'm sad, I'm very resentful of my miseducation, I'm angry about the bad things that are happening to good people. It's not fair, it's like not okay. But I have to be careful about acting from that place, because it's possible that I could cause more harm.
Thank you.
It's not going to be helpful.
Thank you.
I think that's really like what we're trying to say is like, of course we have emotions, and please share them and please be vulnerable about them. That is an important part of this, but we have to be careful not to act out of hurt.
Thank you. You were just demonstrating her question, right? Beautiful. I mean, you were, right? Right? You're educated in thought, and you were speaking out of emotion, but you were still with it. And if you can do that, then you're okay. But if you can't do that, then you can cause trauma. Okay? And I'm going to tell you why. Caitlin and I are in a parking lot having an amazing, meaningful conversation. And all of a sudden, she gets very emotional because she's an emotional, beautiful being. And I've opened her heart, and somebody's watching. And right now in this climate, that situation can put my life in danger. Simple as that. That's where we're at.
So that comes back again to awareness. Like that would be my job to know, like if I express this emotion strongly in this moment, that could be harmful for
Yes.
somebody.
Yes. And it's not your intention. It's not your intention at all. Or if I'm just asking for space, right? I'm going through something and I'm asking people for space in my life, and they're just because they love me so much, they just can't give me space. That action and that intention is skewed, right? I'm not being honored to just be able to lean back and make sure I'm okay before I lean in to what I'm not prepared for. Like this dance happens. I would say there's a film called The Tallest Tree or The Last Tree. Oh my gosh. This film is so important. I'm like, why aren't films like that? And there's another film that you should all see. It's the Children's March. It's on YouTube. It's the story of the civil rights movement and who really won the civil rights movement. And this is another film that should be on TV, in schools, not on TV. It should be in schools. It should be required study, because it was the children. Yeah, it was the children who won, who changed the civil rights movement, who broke down the barriers, who made the president get on the television and end this situation. And that cost him his life. And 6 months later, that same church these children came out of, they bombed and killed those little Black girls. These things were connected to one event, and that was the Children's March. And when you see it, there are people alive today because they were kids, and they can look at themselves in the mirror and they're like, we changed the world. And that's what we're going to do right now. That's what we're going to do right now, together. Unveiling the truth of ourselves, unveiling and being uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable. I'm like, but I walk through it. I walk in white spaces. I've been in white spaces, the only Black space, so many times, and had to walk through my biggest fear. When I did not see that movie Get Out, I was like, that's my biggest fear. I don't want to see that movie. That's my biggest fear. We should not have big fears like that. There's no more big fears. We're seeing the worst of our nightmares happening, trending in real time. We're conquering our fears. We're walking in our truth. We're building and bridging this body. We're using it as a tool, because you are not your body. And your mind, what you see is what you remember. So take what you see and make sure you create change so that you're active. The eyes and the heart and this whole region is like, what? Straight down to the gut. What you feel is right. What you know. What you decide to turn away from. What you decide to close your mouth to. You're complicit. And there's no more complicit. There's solidarity. Because we're ready. We're ready. They're watching.
I'm ready.
These are my ancestors. These are your ancestors. And they're just looking with strength, dignity, and pride. Native Americans, Asians, Africans, every one of us, indigenous people, holding the space for America. We love. We're in the melting pot. Ready to create. Who's ready?
I really feel that about children. That also relates to what you said about like, you don't need to fight with your family, because like it can create more traumas. And like I'm seeing in my little like white bubble, I'm seeing that play out with my own son, with my divorced parents' families. He's in Philadelphia right now with my parents, and like they're all getting together, both sides of the family, for the first time in 30 years. And they're not coming together because somebody proved to the other person that they were wrong about X, Y, and Z, or whatever. They're coming together in love because of this little beautiful perfect person. And so that makes so much sense to me. And like you said it so beautifully, I've been trying to think and figure out, like, why does it feel so wrong to me that everyone is out there on social media like telling each other what to do and what they're doing wrong? Like, I get it. It's righteous. There's like, it's the intention is like right, but why does it feel so wrong? And that like really just nails it for me. That you just can't make somebody see by telling them that what they're doing is wrong. It just historically hasn't worked.
I don't want you to bend a knee if you don't want to bend a knee.
Yeah, how do you make somebody bend a knee who won't bend a knee? You get out the baton.
That's right.
That's not, we don't want to move forward with violence. No. We want to end this violence.
That's right. It's an evolution of love, baby. It's an evolution of love.
I love you so much. Thank you so much for talking to me today. So this has been just so incredible. I really hope we'll do it again. And I'm really looking forward to your workshop on the 18th.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for your questions and participation. Sydney, I hope that, we answered that for you satisfactorily. And we can certainly continue this conversation in the comments. And Ghylian, I invite you and welcome you to hop into the comments and have conversations with people in the comments. I think that I'm just really stoked, you guys, all of our B people that I was able to introduce you guys to this brilliant spirit today. And thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are. Enjoy your self-care checkout. Oh. And I'll touch base with you after July 5th with details about your workshop and to invite you to talk with me again in this forum. And hopefully people will tune in again and have questions. And I just love that we're breaking up crusts.
Yes, we are. And BE people, I hope to see you and create community with you and grow. And when I come to St. Petersburg, connect in person.
Maybe you'll move here.
You're trying that, aren't you?
Can't not just throw our name in the hat. Ghylian's gonna move and she doesn't know where yet. So I'm just saying.
No idea.
It's pretty cool.
See, there's things that you don't have to know about, people. Just go with the flow sometimes.
Oh, well, thanks, Ghylian.
You're welcome.
I will definitely be touching base really soon. Enjoy your self-care time. And thank you so much for your vulnerability and your wisdom, most of all, today.
Thank you so much. Take care of that family.